Greetings, the AEL480 here yet again, and welcome to the next exciting installment of this AEL480 amplifier build, part 6. Yes, and today I'm going to be drilling the front panel so it can accept all the hardware. Now, I don't have the PCB for the selector switch yet, but I do have the switch. However, that's not going to stop me from drilling the holes for it because, well, I already have the CAD drawing for it, so I know the physical dimensions and measurements. And yesterday I've gone ahead and I've masking taped up the front panel and marked out where all the holes are going to be. Yes, I made a few mistakes, but I crossed them out. So we've got the power switch here, the headphone socket there, the bass pot there, treble, balance, volume, the switch, and the 5 LEDs. Now it's going to be a 5-channel input. There's going to be input facilities for, you know, CD or AUX 1, 2, 3 and 4 plus tape. So that's the plan there. It's really irrelevant what these inputs are as long as it's marked as to what they do, so yeah, whatever. So I've got 45mm between the switch and the volume, and of course 45 between the volume and the balance, so it looks even. And it's 35mm between the LEDs. And because of the constraints of the sub panel on the inside, I've got a maximum with those rails of area of 35mm. So I've made, I think it was 35mm. I'll measure it again in a second. So I've made my LED spacings 8mm apart from each other. So yeah, it'll fit within inside the constraints of the sub panel. So I don't know if I've measured this on camera before, but okay, correction, it's 40mm, not 35. So yeah, but still, I think my PCB that goes behind here is only 35mm in height anyway, so it shouldn't really be an issue. But there is only 40mm of gap in between these two rails, so it does make it a little bit more difficult with the LEDs. So I could have made my spacings 10mm between the LEDs, but that would put it at 40mm between the top and the bottom LED, and yeah, that's not going to be acceptable or useful. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to center punch all these holes, pilot drill them with a brand new 2mm drill bit, because I think the one in my drill set box there is a bit blunt. So I'll use a brand new 2mm drill bit to drill the pilot holes, and then we'll cross the bridge of how are we going to get these holes the same on the sub panel and line up. So let me get to doing some drilling and we'll come back. Drill, 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 drill. I'm not serious. Okay, and there's the panel drilled with the pilot holes. Not too many issues there. I've just got to clean off all that crap that's sitting on top of the panel. And now we cross the bridge of how are we going to get the holes exactly the same in the sub panel as the front panel. Well, we could measure, but the inner dimensions of the case is smaller than the outside dimensions by about 1.5mm, so you'd have to take that into account. However, there is an easier way, and I did a similar thing with that classic D amplifier that I built a few years ago. But first, what I'm going to do is, the amplifier is unplugged currently. I'm going to get rid of all this temporary rubbish that I put on there, so that it's not really necessary now and it's not in the way anymore. And that went on the floor, and just move them out of the way. So with the power switch, move him out of the way. And if we move this sub panel all the way forward and then tighten the screws again, that's all the way forward. I don't know if I can do that because I don't know where the front panel comes to, but if we now take our front panel and we slide in where it goes, and I remember with this case the bottom cover has to come off in order to put the front panel on, so there is that, which might be a little bit awkward now, but I'll cross that bridge when I actually come to put the screws in it for the final time. Right, so we've got the front panel on there. The sub panel can slide up to it wherever it stops, and I'll put some screws in the front panel so it holds it straight. And now that the front panel is secured to the case, there's a screw in the bottom, middle and two on either end here just to hold it straight. And then we push the sub panel all the way up to meet the front panel, and then we do the screws up reasonably tight. You can't see me on that corner because I'm on the other side of the case, but that's alright, because we worry about setting the depth of the panel once we've got, you know, things connected. So with that tight, we can take our drill and we can actually bring it through the panel but we don't have to drill all the way through because then we get crap inside the case. But we've now marked where our hole is, and as long as you get the drill reasonably straight, it should be fine. And you just do this all the way along the line until all the holes are marked. Or if you wanted to, you could just drill all the way through and make a complete mess. And with all the screws removed, pull the panel off, and as you can see, we've got our holes divoted into the panel where we can now reinsert the drill bit and drill them out. And we have an exact copy of the front panel. And so that just means all we simply do now is we just unscrew this sub panel from the inside of the case and we can take it out and drill it. However, I've got to do two things first. I need to measure out these holes for these brackets here from the headphone socket center. They appear to me that upward wise that the hole center here lines up with the hole center here, so that's not too much of an issue. It's 18 millimeters between here and the socket center and 66 between the two, so that's pretty easy. And with this switch, there's a little dowel pin here, and on the PCB it is down at the bottom left hand corner. So I've measured it that it'll be 7mm from the dowel pin up to the center of the pot in the vertical direction, and 7mm between the dowel pin and the shaft in the horizontal direction, so it's 7 by 7. So even if that's wrong, it's on the sub panel, I can always modify the hole. It's not a great issue. So that means I've just got to put some tape on and mark out where the holes need to be, the extra holes need to be, and yeah, then I can drill it. And with all the pilot holes drilled in the sub panel now, I can move on to sizing them up to the correct sizes, and I'll do the front panel's holes last. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with this switch hole just to make sure I've got my dowel pin lined up correctly. So I'm going to drill the dowel pin hole out to 3 and the shaft hole out to 10, which is the required diameter. So let me get to doing that, then I'll work on the headphone socket assembly, make sure I can get that all you know, squared away. That seems to fit okay. So I'm going to leave it at that until I get the PCB, and I may have to massage the hole. I'm not 100% sure at the moment, but yeah, it'll work. Penis. Alright, all the holes are drilled in the sub panel out to their correct size. The headphone socket is actually 10.3 millimeters on the overall diameter, and about 10.5 in the other directions, because it's got a little flat here, you see. So I filed out an elongated hole to make that fit. These holes line up okay. These were just drilled to 6.5 and then filed out to around about 7. They fit the pots fine. Did notice my base pot is actually pointing slightly at an angle that way because of the way it's soldered on the board. I may or may not fix that yet, I don't know. And these LED holes, so the LEDs can pass through, are set to 5mm. So that should give us enough room, if my hands would work, to pass the LED through the hole without the legs shorting on the metalwork. Just got to be mindful of all of that when actually soldering the LEDs on. So now I can start to mount the peripherals. So I'm going to start with the headphone adapter. And I've got these M3.5mm screws. They're 6mm long, and they have an Allen key head on them, because these are 3.5mm threads. Nice. Now it doesn't need to be over tightened because it's only plastic, but that fits on there nicely and the board doesn't look too crooked from behind. By the way, this hole here for to pass the switch through is 18mm, and the actual diameter of the switch shaft is 16. So now the next stage is to actually drill out the front panel holes to the correct size. I'm going to start with the headphone socket so I can make sure that it lines up. And yeah, because I've got to file that one out a little bit too with a to 10.3 so it fits over the end of the shank of the headphone socket nicely, and the panel may have to be shifted backwards as well. But let me get to fixing this up. And even though the hole's not the correct size yet, it looks like horizontally and vertically it's going to line up with the front panel perfectly. Alright, so I have to file that out now so it can accept the socket. Doesn't take much, now it fits. So now I can set my panel depth so I know what I'm doing. So I'll just loosen off the screws on either side, and I just shut the whole assembly backwards until everything fits, and I'll just put a couple of screws in the top and one in the bottom, just so that I can then adjust the sub panel depth properly with the front panel completely straight. And yeah, then I've got to take the panel back off, and I've got to do the other holes. Kind of lost my tangent there. Right. So that looks like about right. So, oops, that's twisted now. The headphone socket being the one component which is going to stick out the furthest, I want that flush with the front panel, which it pretty much is. So I'm just eyeballing the top rail here, it looks reasonably straight. So we can do that screw up, and the bottom I'll pull out so it looks the same as the top. Let's make sure that those screws are nice and tight. Bottom and top look fine on this side. Yeah, I think so. Excellent. Starting to look like something now. Right, so I'm going to pull that panel back off, but first I'm going to go have a quick cigarette break because I've been working for the last hour and a half at this. It's coffee time here on the AEL480. Yes, I know I've got a dirty cup. I will wash it later. I've got the panel clamped to the desk, so it's got something to grip to, because I'm sick of drilling panels with this stepper bit, holding it by hand, and the drill, when it bites in, spinning everything around. So I'm going to do the power switch hole, which has to be to 16. See how that bites and it snaps around? That's what I'm talking about. Whoa! Okay. That's why I decided to do this hole first, because it's a pain in the ass. That's 14 mil, I believe. I need to switch wherever I'm done with that. I'm going to get rid of all this crap. I mean, doing this sort of stuff is fun, but at the same time, doing the hardware is always the annoying part. Because when the drill grabbed, I lost count of how many, one more. I lost count of how many steps I'd gone. Because it goes from 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, etc. Ow. God, that's a pain in the ass. I hit my knuckles on the G-clamp too. Okay, luckily that's not a face hole, i.e. that it sticks out from the front and is visible. So that should now fit in there. And it does. Alright, now I've just got to drill out the other holes. Wish me luck. Right, the front panel is drilled to the correct size holes. There's a few little boo-boos here and there which I'll have to fill in with some black texture, just where it went sideways. A drill press using one of those star bits or stepper drills is pretty much well what you need. I don't have one at the moment, my old one's dead anyway. So I'm going to label the front panel as well. I do have a solution for that. I did, back in January, win this Letraset sheet in an auction on eBay. They're about 5.1 high, so they're pretty big, but being proper Letraset, it should transfer to this metalwork fine. Thing is, I'm going to wait until I've got the switchboard so I can, mount my LEDs in the correct distance, because I've got to handle the panel a bit more yet anyway. And this has to be clean and dry and free of grease and dirt before I even start, so I'll need a good thorough clean first. Then I can do the transfer, and then it's going to have a spray of clear coat over the top of it. So any boo-boos are going to be noticeable from the outside world. I'll just fill in with some black texture prior to the clear coat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to loosely mount my power switch where it belongs, because this has got to come back off as well when I do the labelling. So I'll just get this nut off and pass the switch through the panel and put him the right way up. And now I'll put my nut back over the wires, and I'll just finger tight him up. As I say, I'm not going to do it up properly. I'll use a spanner for that when it's finalised. And I'll also put the handles on the front panel when it's clear coated, but not beforehand. So there we go. There's the power switch mounted. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start. Well, I might as well mount the preamp. That might be a good start. I don't know if I'm going to have time to actually wire it today, but yeah, at the same time, I just want to get loose stuff mounted so it's not just sitting around. So I've got a little tub here with all my hardware in it, and it's getting down to almost nothing, which is good. So shit, there goes the washer, straight onto the floor. So a washer, a nut, and again I'm only going to do this up finger tight because I may or may not have to pull this back out again. So I'll do the other corner. Alright, lovely, the preamp is mounted now. I'm going to worry about the switch when I get the board. That should be here tomorrow if I didn't already mention that. So I can now check the fitment of my panel with the chassis after I get my wires through for the switch. Okay. Apart from it wanting to flip forward because of the bottom cover, and the fact that it's not lining up with the headphone socket properly at the moment. I may have to file him out a bit more because it did actually fit at one point, but now it's trying to be a pain in the ass. Right, yeah, I'll have to file that out a little bit more at the bottom, I think, just to make him fit a little bit better. I'll fiddle with that later. However, all the pots stick out reasonably through the centre of the hole. They're not quite on centre, which is kind of annoying. But it looks like the switch hole is. I can verify that. I'll just grab the switch and put it in. So I can't really see what I'm doing. Yeah, it looks like it comes out central. Because well, why don't we just take the nut off? I hope you guys are enjoying these videos as much as I am enjoying doing them. I mean, it's not really exciting to see me assembling a panel. But no, that looks like that's alright. In fact, I might as well put that on. I'm going to have to cut this shaft down prior to soldering anyway. Looks like that fits fine. Put this panel back on. Again, I've got a problem with that headphone socket. That is going to really start to annoy me shortly, so it just does not want to go on flush. Anyway, the switch is sticking out enough, I think. I don't know. Yeah, that hole is a little tiny bit off. So that's not real great at the moment. So I might have to file him out as well, just a little bit. Right, that fixed it. I just shifted the vertical alignment of the sub panel on this side and pulled it up a little bit, and that's just made it fit on there square and flat, and also adjusted the depth of the panel a bit more so that the edge of the headphone socket was sticking more proud and close to flush with the front. So that solves that problem. And now pretty much I can actually slip that over the headphone socket without too much issue. If I could get the corner to go in on this side, that'd be great. Okay. Or maybe not. There we go. It's just off a slight angle. That is perfect, I think. So I can pop some screws in him, and yeah, I'll move on to the next bit, which is pretty much, you know, getting the preamp wired into the power amps and see if the thing still works. Okay, so let's get rid of this mess, because I'm going to redo the wiring here. So I've cut those cable ties off so they're not on the case anymore. I'm going to probably still have to cable tie the wires on until I've done the input selector board. I'll just disconnect all this stuff which is no longer needed right now, not for this part. I'll unplug the RCA. Okay, that can go sit somewhere else. So now I need to make up the power amp ends of this cable. But first I'm going to put that down under there like that. I'm going to route this cable where it needs to go. So it's going to go up the side of the case in these little things. Yeah, that was clever, right? I'll pass him up that way. Ah, yeah. I don't know where that went, I'll find it in a minute. All I want to do is get this cable through and untwist it. Right, something like that. And then put that in that one there. And finally that one there. Skipping one as I go because I want to use the others for something else, so that just has to sit in there loose. I am just basically talking to myself at this point. Right, so I've got to stop kicking the tripod too. That's how long the wire needs to be, is where my finger is. So I'll just quickly mark the edge of the cable and my finger, and I will cut him off. A pair of scissors will do. A little bit longer than necessary, so about an inch. There we go. Now I can then go ahead and make up the cable. Okay, that's done. Now, I still haven't hooked up the input lead, but I've got the power switch all hooked up and everything, so I need to turn it on now and test to see it still even works, which it should. There's no reason why. So hit the power. Nice. Yep, it's working. Yeah, but I do have a little bit of a buzz there. I'm just going to try removing the ground on this side and then ground the preamp to the star point and just try again. Right, I've figured out the problem. The output lead needs to be grounded to the ground of the power amp, because I've got this connected to ground and the noise goes away on that channel. If I stick it in here without shorting on anything, it goes on that channel too. So that means that these have got to be cut out and put with a header, and I've got to now solder in a header, which means I'm going to have to remove the power amp PCBs to do it. And the volume control is, well, it was noisy. I think it's because it's not actually grounding properly. Anyhow, first, before I do that, I'm turning it off. I've actually changed this AE552 IC to an LM833, so it's a bit of a higher quality op amp. And because I had some knocking about, I thought, well, I'll just change the output one so I can get as little noise as possible. So now what I have to do is, whilst I'm tidying stuff where you can't see off camera, I'm going to hook up the input lead to it and to an audio source just to check that we're passing a signal through okay. And then, yeah, I'll work on the power amps. And that'll probably be it for today because it's getting late and I need to start getting ready for work. So let me get underway. Alright, so signal gen's hooked up to the input. Coming out nice. Might actually change the frequency to something else actually. No, that's the wrong thing. I want to go there and I'll go to say 440. Nice. Alright, let me work on this off camera and get those sockets sorted out. That was a complete waste of time crimping on those pins, but oh well, it is what it is. Okay, so about half an hour of screwing around. I've actually got these now as headers, which they probably should have been in the first place. I don't like those PCB pin header things. They're very stiff to get on and off. Anyhow, I'm going to test it now. Turn it on. Absolutely, yes, okay, soldering on. Absolutely no noise. I can't hear anything coming out of those speakers at all. Nothing. It's dead quiet. That's perfect. I mean, we'll get a hiss now when we turn the volume control full up. However, there is no mains bars behind it, so that's pretty good. I am happy with that. Alright, so I need to hook back up my input signal back to the preamp module, and I can grab hold of the lead. It goes into there like that, and I've lost my thing on the floor. That's good enough. Sweet. Okay. So that's all well and good. I don't really need to test that at the moment with a audio sound like a song or anything, because I'm going to leave this part of the video here because I don't know how much footage I've got to edit now, and I'm going to edit that down into a sizable part, and then I'll continue on with the next bit tomorrow, which is, well, hopefully my PCB arrives so I can do this part, but I also want to, you know, get what the shaft length is that's sticking out of the unit so I can cut my switch shaft down the same length. So at the moment I've got 11 mil sticking out, so that's how much I've got to take off this one to make it 11 mil. I have to take off about 18 mil or so. So that'll be something I'll work out tomorrow because I've got to start getting ready for work now. And yeah, I'll just tidy up in the interim and then get ready for work. Well, it's actually the next week now. I was hoping these would come by Friday, but it's actually now Tuesday the following week, but that's alright. The PCBs for the switch indication board thing have arrived. I've already taken it out of the box. I didn't see the point of opening another PCB box just to, you know, show some PCBs, because this video is getting on quite long. We're already at the half-hour mark, and I know this because I've already edited the last part. So it's just a simple, if I can get this open, it's just a simple single-sided PCB design, fairly sparse, all the LEDs there, and you know, blue on the back here. It's reasonable quality. There's space here for a header connector, but I'm not going to use one. You could put an angle one there if you wanted to. I'm just going to hardwire it to the board, and that's where this large 4.3mm hole comes in. That's so I can pass a cable tie through the PCB and through the wiring that's going into the PCB, just to keep it neat and stop it from moving around. So that should do the job just nicely. I believe that this will fit my amplifier's front panel just fine. So I really have to pull the front panel off, pull the switch out, mount the switch, so I can then mount the LEDs. Okay, with the switch removed from the unit, I'm going to make sure that it fits my footprint, which it looks like it will. It's just awfully tight. But there should just be enough pin there to solder. I could probably enlarge the holes, but I want to make sure that I get that as straight as I can. So yeah, that should work. I've already cut the switch shaft down, so which doesn't appear to move. There it goes. Right. So I'm going to leave the switch mounted there for now. But what I have to do is I have to populate these resistors here, the 47Ks, which are the dropper resistors for the LEDs. Because the way this switch selector is going to work is power comes in via plus V here, plus 12 volts, goes through the center of the switch, comes out through each of the switch positions, through a 47K resistor, through its associated LED at the anode, then the cathode, comes out of each of these respective CT positions here on the connector, back to the input selector board, into the base of a transistor, which drives the relevant relay for that particular input. So that is how that is supposed to work. And the reason the LED will turn on is because of the base emitter junction of the transistor it's connected to. So that's how it gets its negative reference for the LEDs. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to solder in the resistors, and I'm not going to worry about the connector right now, and solder in the switch, and then I'll put this in the unit and put the LEDs in. This is kind of reminiscent of an old Dick Smith kit. Yeah, but I've got the switch soldered in now. I'm just going to solder the 5 47K resistors in. This is only a single-sided board, as I said. I didn't see the point to having double-sided for this. It just requires more effort when soldering. So, and just in case things don't work and I have to change something, I want to make sure I can remove all the components without too much trouble to repurpose them. But I shouldn't have to. And I've put a blank unassembled PCB up against the front panel holes in the sub panel, and they line up perfectly. So everything's all good in that department. So once I've soldered these in and cut the lengths of leads off, I can go about inserting it in the front panel, obviously with the LEDs already in their respective holes. So yeah, I'll get to doing that. So with the switchboard mounted and the LEDs inserted and the front panel put back on, I can now guide the LED that I want to do into position and then solder him. I have noticed though that the board is sitting at a slight crooked angle. It's a little crooked. So what I'll do, I'm not worried about it being crooked as long as it's functional. It fits in there nicely, and I'll solder one end of the LEDs in turn whilst pushing them through the hole to make sure they're making contact with the inside of the front panel. And yeah, then I'll deal with the cable that comes off of it. LEDs are done. These are 3.3 volt forward voltage 1500 MCD blue LEDs. They were a little bit awkward to get through the front panel, mainly because the 3mm holes I drilled weren't quite round. So now I've got to deal with this cable, which I've already made up. Now the positive voltage rail is going to be the white wire, and trigger number 1, I believe it is, yep, is going to be the red wire. So these ends will be stripped and passed through the board and soldered directly. So I'll get to doing that because, well, that's kind of boring to watch. Alright, that tedious task is done, and you can see what I meant about that hole at the top there. It's basically like a strain relief for these loose cables, so that it's not directly pulling on the actual joints where they're soldered to the board when manoeuvring the loom, as I'm going to call it, around inside the case. It basically just stops nuisance breaking of wires. So now I need to get that in the case and the front panel back on, and then I can actually test the operation of each of these LEDs. Right, okay, so the PCB is in, front panel is back on. Now I've got the power supply wires that will come off of the regulator board, go back around the case to the selector board, coming back out through this plug. I've got the 12 volts going into the white wire where it always has to be, and I need to provide a ground obviously for the cathodes of each LED in turn, and currently I'm on the red wire with the blue lead, so that should be this top LED here, if I'm not mistaken, which it is. So that functions. Now if I turn the switch, it'll obviously go out. So now I need to switch this lead to the next position along, turn the switch, and that LED lights up. Now I need to do that for all of them down the line, so I'll just turn the switch, I'll move the lead, we have an LED. If I put that in the next one, turn the switch, we have an LED, and put it in the last one next to the power wire. There we go, they all light up and light up correctly. So that's that part done. Now the front panel is going to have to come off yet again, be cleaned and then labelled, but I don't have actually time to do that right now. I will make that a job for tomorrow. But the hard part is out the way, and it is a little bit awkward getting this panel on and off over those LEDs. However, I can give the board at the back here a slight twist because there is about 1 millimeter of movement in that dowel pin of its position. I can just grab the edge of the PCB and torque it up a little and the panel will fit on nicely. I'm also, when it's off, going to file out a little bit more of that hole for the headphone socket, just so it fits on there a lot more easier, because it is kind of a struggle trying to get this end to line up and that end to line up. Not that the front panel should be coming on and off all the time. Alrighty then, it's the next day and I've got the panel off, and if you're wondering why I'm wearing gloves, it's because I've cleaned it. And I normally don't, but in this instance I want to make sure that I don't get any oil or grease or fingerprints from off my hands and, you know, stuff like that all over the panel prior to spraying it. Because to do these rub-on transfers, the panel needs to be clean, dry and free of oil, and for the paint, the clear coat to stick, it also has to be free of the same material. So that's why the gloves. Probably the first time on this channel you've seen me wear them. Yay! Anyway, I've drilled out these LED holes to 3.2mm, and I've just gently filed this a little bit more on this part for the headphone socket, just to make the panel easier to get on and off without, you know, screwing around trying to torque things. So I'm going to do the tedious task of labeling up the panel off camera, because I would want to have the tripod out of the way, so I'm unencumbered. So I'll get to doing that, and the next time you see it, it should have some text on it. Alright, the labeling is done. Yeah, some of it looks a little bit crooked, maybe a little off center, but yeah, again, doing it by hand, it's not very easy to get it straight and accurate, but it serves its purpose. It marks what each control does, and, well, in this case, what each LED does. So that's all that really matters. So now what I have to do is clear coat it, but before I do that, I'm going to take a black texter, like a permanent marker, and just go around the inside of the holes that are going to be visible to the outside world, like including the LED holes here, just so that you don't see the bare aluminium through it. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. Spray it, let it dry, and put it back on the amplifier. So there's the panel sitting there in front of a heater baking away. It's been sprayed. It stinks like solvent in here now, or spray paint. I sprayed it outside, but as soon as I sprayed it outside, considering the current weather conditions at the moment, it's spitting with the rain occasionally. I wasn't going to leave it sitting out there. It'd be much better for it to be air dried than it would be to force dried with heat. But yeah, it is what it is. Should only take about another 15-20 minutes or so now to harden up nice enough so I can handle it. In a perfect world, it would be left for 24 hours overnight before handling, but on my channel this is not a perfect world. Anyway, when it's dry enough to handle, I'll remount the power switch and tighten that up, and also put the handles on the front panel. I've got them sitting on the desk ready to go. Right there, in fact. I didn't worry too much about the text around the holes because it wasn't really working, and I couldn't get the tip inside the LED holes anyway. So in the end I said, yeah, bugger it. So I'll wait for that to set up, and yeah, I'll catch up with you in just a few seconds. The power switch and the handles are now mounted. At least it gives me something to handle it with now. Boom boom. Now, next thing to do is I'm going to, well, clean the inside of the panel because it's covered in all this, I don't know what, manufacturing crap. It's not going to be seen, but yeah, I just don't like that. And I might stick a bit of hot glue around the thread of that switch just to stop it spinning loose, because those are very hard to tighten and keep straight at the same time. So there is that. And then I can put it on the amplifier itself. It's a bit cleaner. It's not perfect. I mean, I don't know what that is. It's like some form of coating or oil they put on it. I've never actually seen the inside one of these rack case panels look like that before. I mean, that's how it's not from me handling it. That's how I received it. So it's anyone's guess. And always when I'm doing something with my hands, my nose starts to run. Why? I don't know. It just does. Don't need a lot. Just enough to stop the switch from backing out through, pushing it in and out all the time. That, I think, should be more than plenty enough. I don't want to go over the top with that. I don't want to make this video too long, but as long as you're enjoying it, I suppose it's the main thing. So I'll just pass these wires through for the switch, and I'll route them a little later. I'm not going to do it right now because I need to move some things around. So right, that's fine for now. There we go, it's on. LEDs are through. There is a bit of a resistance there because the bottom panel is trying to push it forwards, which it can't do. So I'm going to stick a couple of screws in the top. And the fun bit, I'm going to turn it over, remove the screws for the bottom, and probably take the 4 on the corners here at the back, so I can slide the bottom cover backwards, so I can get 2 screws on the other side of the panel that way. Alright, so hopefully I have enough room to shift this backwards. Which I do. I don't need that much, I just need to get to the screw heads. Yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. The case doesn't quite line up. But I got it in there, which is fine. This should not have to come back off again, so I'm not really too worried about tightening it all the way up. Same with the other end. Because once these screws are done up and the bottom's put back on, it'll pull it back square again anyway. And put its screws in through the front panel where they belong. And whilst I'm at it, I'll put the 2 side ones in as well. I put the 4 I took out the back in, and then we can have a look at it and I don't know, blow our loads. Yeah, and there we have it there. It's all screwed together. The panel's on for the final time. I'm not taking this back off. Everything should be tight. Everything still moves, so well, the balance completely moved. So that's the main thing, everything still moves. So all I have to do is just re-establish the electrical connection and yeah, it's back to being usable. Power switch is a little bit, you know, right near the handle, but whatever. So I think this is where I'm going to leave this part of the video series of the build, is because, well, I can't do much else now. I've ordered some parts like RCA sockets for the rear, so I can then start measuring and routing out the input selector PCB. And so that'll be in hopefully part 7, the final part, where I have everything done. Back panel, artwork, etc. I've got just enough letraset, I think, left to do that. That's sprayed, protected, everything's screwed together, and then finally this top cover will go on for the final time. And oh, look at that, it's almost complete. I also need to get hold of some knobs. Now, I was thinking black knobs originally, but what I might do is I might use silver knobs, so it's a 2-tone sort of arrangement, because the power switch over here, which you can't quite see because the handle's in the perspective way of the switch, it'll match with that. It would have been nice if the headphone socket was completely silver all the way around. I could have painted it, but I didn't. But the actual socket part itself is silver, so yeah, I reckon the 2-tone will match just nicely. And it feels like, I'm hoping my LEDs all came through the hole, but came through the holes. But yeah, I think they did. It's hard to tell, gloves on. Anyway, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed making it. But yeah, so this is the AEL480 saying thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. If you haven't gone down below, liked, comment and subscribed yet, please do so. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Anyway, catch you later.